I'm Sarah Walworth. I am the owner of the Tech Editor Hub, and today on this broadcast, I am interviewing Laura Cameron. Laura, hi,
Hi.
welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for
Laura,
having me. This is exciting.
so Laura started in the industry as a knitting technical editor. How many years ago? So that would have been 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
And she has worked with a variety of designers, magazines, yarn companies. She worked with the marketing skills at Stitchcraft Marketing.
Uh-huh.
She's now a project manager for fabric e-tailer Missouri Star Quilt Company, and she hosts a weekly podcast and blog about her crafty pursuits. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to talk with you. So let's talk about yarn first. What are you making with yarn right now?
Sure. I'm kind of on a summer tea kick. So I just started in the last couple nights. This is Joji Locatelli's new hipster tea. And it's a really fun construction. She has you kind of provisionally cast on for everything, kind of around the neckline, and then you're building your left and right fronts and your back, and then you're going to join in the round. So, and it's for my size, it's 2 skeins of fingering weight. So it's pretty simple. It's going to be a lightweight tee, fingering weight. So I'm excited about that.
And that's purple, purple, purple. That's really beautiful. Am I getting that right?
It's kind of my monitor's a little off, but it's kind of a burgundy and then kind of a dusty pink.
Let me see if I can spotlight you. Hold on.
Sure.
Oops, it's not gonna, is it gonna let me? Yeah. Hold on.
Well, I'll post photos
Hello.
on Instagram soon.
There
Oh, there
we
we go.
go.
Yeah. So it's kind of a burgundy. I think it's something wine related. Oh, it's Song of the Sirens, and then the contrast color is From the Depths She Rose. It's yarn dyed by one of my favorite indie dyers. She's a friend of mine, Treasure Goddess. So
Mhm.
I have her label right here, Treasure Goddess.
Nice. Oh, so it's got yak in it.
It does, which is probably not the best for summer tea, but
You know what? As long as there's holes in the yarn,
that's
and
true.
like there's a lot of yarn overs, the air can go through. I'm making progress on my summer tea too. It's
That's pretty.
not, it's late. I finally have the lace memorized at the top, and I'm hoping that the next interview I do, I'll be able to wear it. We'll see, fingers crossed. It's crazy how when the weather gets hot now, all of a sudden I want a summer tea, right?
Yeah,
It's just
I've been on a kick since spring, and I know as soon as August rolls around, I'm going to be ready for like fall sweaters because I live in Kansas, so it gets cold. So I actually do have a need for wool
yes.
sweaters, a good justification.
Well, thank you everyone who's here watching live. Would love
Yeah,
to see you in the comments. If you are watching live on YouTube, feel free to say hi in the chat. Hi, Mari and Jen, and Bronwyn's here, and
yeah.
Celine and Tara. I'm so excited to have you here. If you have a question for Laura, toss it into the comments and I will throw it up on the screen when we get there. But let's go ahead and jump in. Tell us, Laura, what were you doing before you became a technical editor?
So I have been a knitter since I was a child. My grandmother knit, and she taught me when I was little. But I got back into it seriously in my 20s, which was like right around 2000. That'll give away how old I am. But um, I, sort of the resurgence of yarn stores, and I found a really great local yarn store. And I don't know what it was. I guess my grandmother had passed away in 2000, and I guess I sort of had this block on. It was like the early, very early days of the internet, and I sort of had this block on, like, if she wasn't alive, I couldn't learn more. I don't know why I thought that, but, like, if she wasn't here to teach me, how was I gonna learn? And I went into this local yarn store, and it's like the whole world exploded because I was like, "This is what I can learn from anyone," like magazines and just everything, and my previous yarn had been Joann's and Michaels because I was a kid, that's what I could afford. Um, and I always would have loved to make it a career, but I couldn't kind of figure out a way to make it because piecework is not very easy to make a living from. And so I spent a lot of years being an admin assistant. I worked in higher education. I worked for a biomedical institute, sort of on the administrative side. Um, And in 2016, I found, Jolie's course,
Yes.
and because that was back when she was running it, and I thought, "This is kind of interesting. Maybe I should try taking this on the side and see if this fits." And it was spreadsheets and numbers and bringing order to chaos and proofreading and, like, all the things that I sort of was good at and, was following up on all the details as an administrative assistant, and, I was like, "This could actually be something." And so I admit I've never done it full time. I've most of the time done it along with something else.
Mhm.
But it was really exciting to just kind of get started and find something where I could be very adjacent to the craft. And the other thing that I like about it is that it doesn't, even if I'm working on knitting patterns all day, it doesn't take the joy out of knitting in the evenings. Whereas like sample knitting can sometimes be, I've done that too, but sample knitting can sometimes be more of an obligation.
Yeah, I hear you. I love this order to chaos or chaos to order.
Yeah.
So, how did that play into deciding to become a technical editor? Like, what made you decide, like, okay, this is what I want to do?
Well, I think it was just it like I said, it suited me quite well. I had been proofreading, I had been sort of checking all the details, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's. I had sort of knit voraciously through all kinds of things. And so I was familiar with lots of knitting constructions and different kinds of patterns and the patterns that I liked that I thought were good and the patterns that I thought could probably use some help. And here was this way to sort of work through in a systematic way and help make them better. And I've always been so I, I read this book and I can't remember what it's called. I really should look it up. And they talked about how there were a bunch of different kinds of people in the world. And you've got your like visionaries and your creators. And I consider those your designers, like the people who think outside the box and who kind of come up with the big crazy ideas and figure out how to make it happen sort of. But then you've got the people behind them who are like working on all the details, and that was really the person that I knew I was. And so it kind of was a good fit with the kind of checking all the details and making sure everything worked the way it was supposed to and sort of conveyed the big ideas to the knitter.
I
So
love this. It's so eloquent. You just described all of it. Like, we're working in collaboration with the visionaries,
uh-huh.
and we're helping with all the details, so they don't have to be bogged down by the details.
Yeah,
We can help with that. Um, and
definitely.
I love that. That's so exciting. What's your workspace like? Like, I see you have a gnome looking over your
Yes.
shoulder.
I have lots of things. I host a weekly podcast, and I joke that the oops, other side. I joke that the gnome is my co-host. He's Norman. I knit him. He's one of Sarah Shira from Imagine Landscapes patterns, and I knit him out of some of my hand spun for one of her knit alongs, and he just kind of lives there with me. This is my husband and I have we each kind of have a room that's our office slash hobby space, and so you can see all of my crafty stuff behind me.
Yes.
I have yarn. I have, since I've joined Missouri Star, I've started to become a quilter. I do some embroidering and I spin. So I kind of cover the wide range, and you can see little bits and pieces of that all around me. It's inspirational. It's a little more cluttered than I would like it to be sometimes. And so sometimes I kind of have to sweep off the desk and start over. But I've kind of got a desk in the corner. I'm right near a window, which means I can look out. And so it's just a really nice kind of, in general, both a calming space to work, but also kind of inspiration and creativity. And I'm close to the yarn if I need to grab something.
Yeah. Do you have a Frankenswatch?
I don't have a freaking swatch at this moment, but only because I actually had to. I was working on tech editing a pattern, and the designer said the test knitter said that the pattern doesn't work here, and I don't know why. And I was like, huh, I can't. And there was no chart, so I was like, I can't see it in my mind. I wish I was Bronwyn. I watched Bronwyn's, and she was like, I can see those, and I cannot see that. So I had to knit a few of the like 10 rounds so that I could get to the point and be like, nope, the pattern sure doesn't line up there, but but and I don't even 100% know how to fix it. I took a picture of the knitting and was like, "This is what I think is going on and where I think it needs to be fixed." But, I sent that back to the designer to take a look at it.
Yeah, and I find that's where I'm leaning more often with my clients is I see the problem here, but I'd like to see how you solve it rather
Uh-huh.
than me. I'm not a designer. So,
No, same
and I've
here.
not been in the pattern and in the work. So I don't want to necessarily give a lot of advice because they may have a better solution.
Right, well, and the thing about this one is it's a staggered cable and you're decreasing for the crown. So I'm really
Whoa.
having a hard time being like, "Okay, you have enough to do another motif here, but you don't have enough to do another motif here. So what are you gonna do in that? Are you just gonna knit in that? What are you gonna do?"
Yeah.
And I definitely had to send that one back.
That's when we all go, not my pattern, not my
Yeah,
pattern. Thank
exactly.
goodness, not my pattern.
Exactly. Send me something different and I'll tell you if it works. And I haven't ripped it out yet because I
Yeah,
assume she's gonna come back and say, "Okay, this is what I think fixes it," and then I'm
right,
gonna
right.
right.
So obviously, this can be part of the tech editing,
Mhm.
but tell me what you have found has been the hardest part of tech editing for you.
So I would say there are 2 things. One is my forte is not big, complicated charts. And so I do try and avoid those in terms of what I tech edit. If it's going to be a real complicated lace pattern, particularly with moving motifs, I'm like, I am not your tech editor. Let me find you someone who can be.
Yeah.
For me personally, probably the hardest part of being a tech editor is mistakes. And
Oh,
I know everybody says that, but that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach when you get an email from a designer who's like, "So I got a comment," or "So somebody said," and I'm like, "Oh, expletive."
beep.
Because because we all know that they happen. We all know we're human. We all know we're trying to
Yeah.
minimize them, and there's still a couple times a year that feeling. I mean, and I always my feeling on it is that it was my mistake. I'm going to take the time to fix it. I'm not going to charge you extra time to fix it. I'm going to apologize and own up to it. um but it's a really terrible feeling. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's just not that much fun, and of course it goes on the list, so I try not to do it again later. but
Right.
like I said, a couple times a year you have this, "Oh no, I missed something."
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that because I feel like we don't talk enough about the fact that yes, we're editors. Yes, we are trying to find all the mistakes. Yes, we're trying not to insert mistakes, but we're not perfect. We
Yeah.
we we have perfectionist tendencies and we may even be people who have using our perfectionism to an advantage and a superpower, but the fact is we miss things.
No one's infallible. I mean,
Right.
there's always gonna be a little something, and,
We just hope it's not a big thing
yeah,
that
yeah,
that
we
that
hope it's not
breaks our
something
relationship with our clients.
exactly. You hope it's not something super obvious that you're like, "That was really stupid. What did I
Okay.
do?"
On a lighter note, Mari has a question. She says, "What is a Frankenswatch?"
So a Frankenswatch is a little piece of knitting that you keep next to your desk. It can take many, many shapes and forms, and it's basically where a tech editor tests out the stitches because it's something you can't see in your head, or you're like, "I think this works, but I don't understand it." And so you knit a little bit of the pattern just to kind of see if it works. Sometimes it's like when I was getting early into socks, yeah, when I was early into socks, I used to do it sometimes to make sure that, like, the short rows that you ended up with the right number of stitches in the middle after you'd done your short row, increases and decreases. It's just basically, it's just this little piece of knitting that can be anything and ends up in weird shapes, and usually after so many, I rip it out and start it back, but it's just some basic yarn and needles so you can kind of work through something that you can't mentally imagine.
Right, because as tech editors, we can't make the whole piece. We don't have enough time for that. Like, our
Yep.
turnaround may be just a few days for the pattern. Like, we get the pattern, we edit it, we knit it in our mind, and with maybe we draw out some of the stitches or chart it or use a spreadsheet.
Right.
but we got to turn this back in 3 days. There is no way we can create the whole piece. So if we get stuck, Mari, we make a little bit of it. Like we might knit or crochet just that little section that doesn't make sense. Sometimes I do it on graph paper if I'm feeling like I just don't want to deal with my Franken swatch that day.
Yeah, I was gonna say basically it's about 10 rows. It's just in big bulky yarn. It's about 10 rows of the decreases on a hat. And
Mm-hmm.
I worked through that because I was told that at a certain point, the test knitter said that the pattern motifs didn't line up appropriately. So I
Right.
had to start a little bit before. I think the question was on row 21. So I started on row 9 so I could get 2 repeats before the repeat that was the problem so that I could see if they would line up. And when I got to the end of the round before, so the end of round 20, and went to start round 21, I was like, nope, the instructions there sure don't make it line up. So that was kind of how I figured it out. So
Well,
and
and the
sometimes
reason,
it's a square, it just happened to be, I mean, and this
yep.
is I'm not a yarn snob. This is, I think it's one of Karen's magic cakes. It's just it's a comfortable weight and gauge so that I can see what I'm doing and potentially take a picture of it and send it to the designer.
And the reason why it's called a Frankenswatch is because we use it for all our projects, and so it ends up being like I just ripped mine back. I had it was a lot bigger, but I just ripped mine back to whatever, like 12 stitches or whatever. But usually, like you build it out, and so that it ends up this messy thing, and then I'll knit a couple rows to get back to like just some knit pieces in order to see the whatever. So yeah, Frankenswatches are fun. I think that might be something we might need to start a hashtag. Show me your
Clearly,
Frankenswatch.
sharing it on Instagram occasionally.
Yeah. So Celine has another question. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Do you include a mistakes clause in the terms with your clients? Excellent question, Celine.
So I am going to be a little embarrassed by this, partially also because in my last day job, I was a legal assistant.
Mm,
Um, I don't actually have a contract that I make with my clients. I have sort of my terms set out on my website, and I explain to them my process, how I work, how I bill, usually in the introductory email. And to be honest, I don't have an official um, contract that I send them. So I don't have a mistakes clause because I don't actually have a contract. If they ask, as I said, mistakes I own up to, I generally fix them for free unless, if there are really some huge rewrites on the pattern necessary, maybe there's going to be a little more time. But in general, I will recheck the pattern again through the mistake area and anything else that needs at my expense because I missed it in the first place. So that's how I've chosen to handle it. I know other tech editors do it different things. I'm not saying that's the best way, but usually it takes me less than an hour to fix what was done, and I
yeah.
feel like that's my contribution to the collaboration.
And here's the thing, like Celine, we all run our businesses differently. We're all independent freelance editors. We get to decide how we want to set up our business. So I have a mistakes clause in mind. It's a simple paragraph that just says that I'm going to be held accountable. If you find an error, just let me know so I can help you fix it. And it's that simple.
Mhm.
It has to do with collaboration. That can be in an email, doesn't have to be a DocuSign. And it's a cool way of thinking about you get to decide as a business owner and also following the laws within your particular environment of where you are in the world, what's required of you for this particular freelance work. And we all do it differently, and it's all not right or wrong. It's just the way we do it. So that great question. Thank you so much for asking that. Let's go ahead and move on. What's references or tools do you find yourself always reaching for in your work?
Well, so I'm sure you'll love this one, but I love this one. I always keep that handy. I also have I've started on Pinterest. I have a hidden bulletin board of like great blog posts from people that I refer back to. So like Isolde Teague had some really great posts when she started out about setting up spreadsheets and sizing. Um, I'm trying to think. Kim is it Kim McBrien Evans? She's Indigo
Yes.
Dragonfly, but she's
Indigo
been doing
Dragonfly
all the
Knits.
work in inclusive sizing.
Mhm.
So I've been keeping a lot of that sort of handy. Um, I do look at I know they're not the best, but I do look at the Craft Yarn Council standards quite a bit,
Mhm.
particularly for things like socks and mittens
Yeah.
and hats, because those to me, I mean, obviously bodies are all different sizes and shapes, but as opposed to like a sweater that has to fit, uh, hands and feet tend to be more relative. And so, you know, when I'm looking for like lengths and making sure that we're kind of covering length and circumference appropriately,
Right.
I'll refer to those. And those are a few of the things that I kind of just, because I'm sitting at my computer and can just type in what I want and pull it up right away. Um,
It's fascinating to use Pinterest this way because I have the same thing, but it's like a bookmarks tab.
mhm.
Um, but it's clunky because at least with Pinterest, you'd be able to see things a little bit easier
Yeah,
if
it
you have
just
the visual.
I think because I was using Pinterest a lot when I started,
Right.
and I mean, I don't use Pinterest for my own marketing in any way.
Mhm.
And actually more of my boards are just like knitting and spinning and crafting inspired. And so it's a hidden board, but for me it was a really nice visual way to kind of, I mean, Pinterest is basically a bulletin board.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
kind of what I
Oh man, you
envision.
know what we're gonna get in the comments is, can you share that with me?
I probably could. Maybe I'll send it to you for a follow-up email.
Oh, we'll stick it down in the comments. If Laura decides to share with us, then we'll
Yeah,
put it down in the description below.
and
So
here's the question you knew we would get asked.
I knew we were going to get this question. You were right about that. Anne Marie says, just got to say, I'm loving the knits you're both wearing. Okay, so tell us what you're wearing, Laura.
Okay, I am wearing the Maven tee, and this is a Ravelry link, so I am gonna say that right now. Oh, my computer's there we go. Okay, it's the Maven top, and it's just a simple top down. It actually, you know, it's funny when I knit patterns. Sometimes this was one of the designer's earlier patterns. She did not build in short row shaping at the back of the neck, and were I to knit it again, I might do that because it's a little bit shorter in the front than it is in the back. You know, just being a tech editor, you notice these things, and I was like, no,
Exactly.
I'm just going to knit it as written because I was on vacation. I knit it with a super long gradient cake from Zen Yarn Gardens,
It's
who
beautiful.
oh, you know what? My comment didn't post. I had
Didn't show.
no.
If
Um,
That's all right. We'll get it in the description. Y'all can follow up
Let me
later.
see here. I'll put it in our private chat so then maybe you can share it with everyone.
Yeah, that's fine.
I knit it with one long gradient cake that was about 800 yards. And it was one of those things that I took on a trip with me because it was one ball of yarn and one needle, well, two needles, but one ball of yarn and a small and a large needle. And it's just basically stockinette with ridges, and then it's got kind of a yoke patterning.
It's
So
beautiful colors.
yeah.
Mine is actually a pattern I edited, and I
Oh,
said,
cool.
"Oh, I would like that for summer." It's Tupe by Lisa Hannes,
Uh-huh.
and but I did the same thing. I put in neck shaping. I can't knit a pattern that doesn't have neck shaping,
I
so
was gonna
that's
say
just
that.
me.
So I don't I have designed a couple small patterns, they're not very inventive. I don't know what my block is, but I cannot sit down and start to knit something without a pattern, but I also
Mhm.
can't knit a pattern as written. Like, my thing is I take the pattern and I tweak it just a little bit based on other things that I know or things that I want the garment to be. For instance, the Hipster Tee by Hoagie Locatelli that I just started, the V is very deep, and I decided that I'm not going to make it quite that deep. I'm going to go a few inches less. And then because I need to have the right number of stitches for the front, I'm just going to cast on, and it's basically going to become kind of a scoop neck, or kind of not quite a V, but you know, kind of an
Right.
oval neck. And and I've done that a few times with sweaters. So
I
I'm
think that it's prerogative as a maker, but it's also kind of the way that our brains work as tech editors. We're like, "Oh, yeah, so" Yeah. So what is the best piece of wisdom you've heard or read lately? It doesn't have to be related to knitting.
you know, I read these questions beforehand, and that was one where I was like, "Ooh, I need to think about that." And and I forgot.
Well, what's off the
Um,
top of your head? Like, what have you heard lately that just kind of resonated with you?
I mean, honestly, I think one of the things that I try and do as a tech editor is I try and play to my strengths and also recognize when a pattern is not for me to edit. If there's something about the pattern that I haven't done before, like, as much as it would be great to jump in and be like, "I can learn anything," clearly that's not the case. And I mean, I guess I'll say it right now. I have not learned to grade patterns, and
Mhm.
so, like, that is something that I just don't. I advertise upfront, if you need somebody to grade your patterns, that's not for me, that's not something I can do. The other thing is I have, way back from Jolie's time, I have kind of the basic schematic package, and I can kind of play with that a little bit. But if you want like hand drawn illustrated schematics, I am not your girl. There are definitely people who can do that.
Yes.
Um, but
And
kind
that's
of
why we're in community, right? That's why we can refer, we can help you out with that. We'll find someone
well,
for
I mean, and
you.
and the coolest thing about being part of the Tech Editor Network is you're like, I have a whole network of people,
Yes.
and if you're part of the Tech Editor Hub, kind of the behind the scenes network, then you can ask all sorts of questions in there. And we do, like, we don't trade clients all the time, but oftentimes somebody will be like, I have a client who needs this, and this is not my specialty. So does somebody else have this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, and I love that. Like, not that we're all in competition with each other, but that sometimes knowing your own limits and being able to send someone elsewhere, um, being able to be helpful to someone sometimes is better than trying to do something that you can't do.
Right. Exactly. So Celine asked a really great question in the comments, and then Anne Marie had a reply to that. Do you feel being visible on social media is essential as a tech editor? I find it takes so much work. I have
Um,
my thoughts on this, but I want to hear yours.
so one of the ways I got more involved in the knitting industry was I spent about 5 years with a boutique marketing firm called Stitchcraft Marketing, and what I did there was social media and email and engagement for yarn shops and people in the industry who didn't want to do their own. Social media is kind of an endless slog, and particularly with algorithms and advertising and all of the things. I find having some presence on social media is kind of necessary. You want people to be able to find something when they go looking for you, and you want to be able to, at some level, control what that is. So putting some of your own work out there is great. I think there are a couple important things you can do for yourself that might mean you have a little bit less work to do on social media. First of all, make yourself a great website. And I don't mean it has to be hugely interactive. Put a page on there that talks about what it is that you do as a tech editor, what services you offer, what services you're not able to offer. That way, when somebody asks you a question or is looking for you, they can find out that information and they don't have to go to social media to mine that for you. One of the things that I did, and this isn't as useful as it once was because of all the issues with Ravelry. However, I created a Ravelry pattern bundle that's called Tech Editing. And
Yes,
I
I
have
did
a
the
link
same.
to that on my website, and it
Yeah.
is all the patterns that I can find that I've tech edited. Now, I know Ravelry is not accessible for everyone, but to me, that was a cool way to give someone a portfolio to see like the breadth and depth of what I had done and which designers I had worked with, without actually putting all their names and all their stuff on my site, without actually reposting all of their patterns, those kinds of things. And that helps because again, it puts all the information in one place.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is if you have enough to say and you really want to start to establish yourself as an expert, you could start an email list because an email list is the way you get to kind of own those names and control how often you get to talk to them. I have not done that because I don't write a lot of blog posts or create a lot of content surrounding tech editing. I pretty much just tech edit. So I don't have that right now. Um, but that is something you can do. The other thing is you should keep an eye on social media. You should follow people, designers, pattern companies, those kinds of things. Because I will say that, so I have been working for the last couple of years with Nitpicks as a tech editor.
Mhm.
And I found that because I was following their graphic designer on Twitter, and she was posting about the fact that they were looking for a couple tech editors and did anyone know anyone? And I messaged her
Mhm.
because I already followed her and said, "Hey, I would love to chat." And she gave me the name of the person to contact and probably passed my name along. And that's how I found my job. So I don't do a ton of advertising on social media, but I try and use the web and social media as a platform for jumping off of, I guess, is what I'm
I
saying.
love that. And I think social media is not the end all be all because it's just a place for people to find you and to see, are you a real person, find out more about you, get to know you, so that you're not this ethereal, I'm just a tech editor, this is what I do, here's my checklist, to get to know you as a person before they hire you. And Anne Marie asks, "Is my guess is that some designers are looking for their editor to promote their pattern?" And I've done this where I create a hashtag for my business that I allow my people who that I work with to use. And I don't know if that still works. I'm not really sure, but I think it's there's all kinds of things that you can do to show that you're a real person, you're trustworthy, you've worked with other people, and social media can be one of those ways of doing it, but it's not the end all be all, is my opinion. I don't know.
No, I remember thinking that your hashtag was brilliant, and because you used Trico Edit Approved, right?
Trico Edit approved. And I
Yeah.
came up with that like 2018, 2017. I mean, it's been a while there that
Well,
you follow
I
that
couldn't figure
hashtag.
out how to do it with mine because I have one of those cases where, like, the business name I sort of use, my name, and then my Instagram name, and none of them match, which is a
Yeah.
whole other story. But yes, I do share patterns. I usually wait until the designer shares it and says it's available, and then I repost it and share it in my stories as something that I edited.
Yeah.
And that's not specifically an agreement that, again, I don't have a written agreement, but I sort of assume, and no one has ever come back to me and said anything after they've released it and they're sharing it for the world and want
Right.
people to buy the pattern.
Cross
I
post.
don't think they would ever have a problem, and most of the patterns credit me as the tech editor, so I don't think they'd ever have a problem with my resharing it and saying, "Check out this great new design I
Yeah.
tech edited."
I think it shows the collaboration too, and I love sharing my clients' work. So we've got some more questions in the chat, which we'll get to in a minute if you all hang on. But I think since we're here, do you have any advice for editors who are just starting out? Like if you could whisper something to past Laura, hey Laura, what would you say?
Um, Contrary to what I said before, some of it I would say is just jump in. I mean, don't over exaggerate your skills. You know, advertise yourself as a tech editor starting out. It's also great if you can find a designer who's sort of starting out too, because sometimes you can grow together. I would say focus on the patterns that you feel most confident to tech edit. So if that is a hat or a sock or kind of a small accessory where you feel like you can get through the pattern and you don't need lots of tips and tricks, sweaters can be really complicated. So because they definitely have to fit better on a body, and there are more aspects of construction. Start small. I know Jolie always talked about offering to do a free tech edit or two in exchange for testimonial.
Mhm.
um, I would say, if you're able to access Ravelry, there are forums where you can post that you're looking to tech edit
Mhm.
in exchange for testimonial. Designers do check those forums.
You can post on
Um,
Saturday in the Facebook group in the Tech Editor Hub. So
exactly. And tell everyone you know that you are starting
yes,
out and
everyone.
that you're looking for work,
Yep.
because I've gotten jobs because tech editors are overloaded with work. If somebody is on a book deadline and they can't finish it, and they're like, "Can you take this client for me?"
Mhm.
You're it's it's friendly co-opetition. I mean, we are all tech editors, we're all looking for clients, but there's more work than all of us can do, and we
Yes.
also are willing and ready to share or hand off, particularly when we're over. I mean, I want to know that I have a couple people that I trust as tech editors that I can say, hey, I can't do this, but let me check with my friend and see if she can, and that I can send a client to them and feel like I have done them a good service. So, and I'm not saying there are bad tech editors out there, but but getting to know a few people and knowing their tech editing style and knowing that you can send your clients to them, if they need
Yes.
extra help is a good way, get your referrals going.
Make friends. I think for quite a few years, when my books would fill up, I had a Google Doc that it was with all of the people I could refer out for their specialty, like
Hmm.
socks. I don't do brioche, so and you have to make friends. We're not in this to do it all by yourself. In fact, we can't run a business by ourselves. This kind of
No.
freelance work, we're not going to be able to do everything.
Well,
So,
and the nature of freelance is that it comes in fits and starts. We're
yeah.
we're super busy prior to big knitting seasons, and then
Yes.
some parts of the year are lean. But if you sometimes you just can't accommodate everyone right before August when all the new fall sweaters drop, it tends
Oh,
to be really busy.
it's coming.
It
We're
is
almost
coming. It is coming.
there. So, what's something in your business you are happy worked out differently than you expected?
So it's interesting because I've gone back and forth about whether or not I have ever wanted this to be my full-time business, and it
Hmm.
never really has. And I think that's okay. Um, I love tech editing, but I also love so many other areas of the craft and crafting industry. And I think being a part of them, also having the freedom to do a lot of knitting and a lot of quilting and other designing and thinking about a lot of different things has helped. Also, I mean, I'm not saying this is true for everyone else. I don't think I could sit and tech edit for 8 hours a day because I'll be honest, it's a lot of brain power, and so I can sit down in 2 and 3 hour spurts and do it, but then I have to take a break and do something else. So, I'm kind of happy that it has not been 100% full time for me, because it's something that I feel like I can always go back to and do. I have a small set of designers that I work with, and then Knitpicks comes in fits and spurts. Right now I'm working on 26 patterns for them, which is, it's like a 2 to 3 week deadline, and
Yeah.
more than half of them are small accessories. But like they'll show up and say, "Hey, we've got all these patterns right now," but then I won't hear from them for 2 months, because it's like the lull in between, and
It's
there's
the
no collecting.
seasonal, like there's
Right.
cycles, like where you
Well,
get
and
really busy.
I'm just one of many of their tech editors because sometimes I look at the pattern for the depending on what kind of pattern it is, they'll do first look, second look. So like
Mhm.
sometimes they'll be the first look, sometimes they'll be the second look, so it's and I don't actually know all the other tech editors that work for them. I just sort of that is very much more of a, they holler at me when they need something, and if I can do it, I do.
That's awesome. So, Courtney Flynn has a question. She's a designer. What are some qualities you found in designers that make the tech editing process go smoothly? It's a good question.
Well, you know, designers come in tons of shapes and sizes, and I don't mean that as a physical thing. I mean that sort of
Right.
as a mental and personality. And I
Aesthetic.
mean, I want I want a designer that I can have a relationship with where I can say, I don't think this works, and have them not get defensive. I mean, and you don't always know that on the front end. um it's a give and take relationship. Some of it's how I say to them, I don't think this works, because you have to be able to come to them and say it in a polite manner, but they also have to be ready to receive it. And there have been clients that I've worked with that I don't work with anymore because we didn't have that give and take, and it didn't work. And, sometimes they were like, nope, thank you. No more. And sometimes I said, I really feel you might be better suited by a different tech editor because I don't feel like our
Yeah, and that
personalities.
happens, and it's
Um,
okay.
in general, I want a designer who's gonna be responsive, and I mean, like, I don't want them to send me their pattern, I send feedback, and then wait weeks and weeks and weeks to hear them again from them again, because I also find that difficult. I go through so many patterns that, like, I wanna be able to discuss it and work through it within a somewhat short time frame, because otherwise if it's a complicated
You
pattern, I have to get back into the
We
pattern. And
forget.
like, well, we do, and we I mean, not every garment's the same, but by the time you've edited 10 sweaters, are you gonna remember the specifics of one sweater 6 weeks later? Probably not.
No.
You're gonna have to go back in and, like, read through the
Yep.
pattern again and really refamiliarize yourself. And so I work better in a relationship with a designer where things are kind of moving back and forth, um, at a regular pace. But mostly just that they're I also like a designer who will tell me what they want up front, and I can ask clarifying questions like, "Do you want me to edit your flavor text? Do you want me to just look for numbers? Do you want me to, what pieces do you really want from me?" And the more clarity you can get with the designer at the front end, the better your experience is going to be because I think most fallouts between designers and tech editors are probably miscommunications on one
Absolutely.
side, you
Or
know.
misunderstandings around expectations of what
Exactly.
the editor is willing to do and what the designer is needing. There has to be a lot of communication. It's a relationship.
Yeah, for instance, like if you send me a chart and written directions, I always ask, do you want me to check the chart against the written directions? That is certainly something I can do, but depending on the chart, that or like a complicated garment with a bunch of charts, that adds an extra hour to the tech editing process. If you don't want to pay for that, then I'm not going to do it, even though there may be errors resulting, but I need to know up front that that's what we've decided
Right.
so that at
Yeah,
the end, if there are problems, we know, where they came
exactly.
from.
Absolutely. So what's your favorite way to take a break from editing besides
You
making
know,
gnomes?
I was gonna say I do tons and tons of crafts. Although I've been plagued by some tendonitis this year, so that has not been fabulous. Although I've taken up embroidery because apparently that is like the one thing that I can do that doesn't
It's
aggravate my
one
tendonitis.
arm and
Exactly.
it's not
Well,
doing
and
this
it's
with
not,
your
yeah, it's
it's
not as
not
much
this.
twisting. I do a lot of reading.
Yeah.
So and over the summer, it's funny because I'm not a sports fan, but like over the summer, I've been watching the Tour de France. I'm getting ready to watch the Olympics and the Tour de Femme. Like it's a whole summer this year.
Yeah, and you can do a lot of crafting while you're watching that for sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, what are your hopes for yourself?
I've been thinking about this and where tech editing fits kind of in my life. It's one of those things that I hope I'll be able to keep for a long time to come. I mean, so I'll just say I'm 46. My husband's a little bit older, so he'll be retiring a little bit sooner than me. I feel like tech editing is one of those things that's never going to go away because there are always going to be knitting patterns, and so there are always going to need to be tech editors to check those patterns. I would like to stay current enough and maintain a presence in tech editing enough so that it could also support me into retirement. When I decide that I don't need a full day job, I'd really like it feels like part of my life now. So,
That's
I don't
awesome. I love it. We have one more question that from the audience, and then we're going to wrap up here. Kat
sure.
asks, this is kind of a this could be one of those, it depends on your business. Do you charge for time spent on emails? For example, if you spend a lot of time answering and researching questions.
If it's something that I can't answer just off the top of my head, then yes, I probably would. If I need to go research and look up and find more information, then I would say yes, I would charge. In general, most of my emails are a back and forth or a hey, I reviewed the pattern and here are the three problems with it. So I mean, I guess I charge an hourly rate and so generally that kind of fits in there and I charge so the way I've done it is I charge by hour and a minimum of 1 hour and then I charge by the quarter hour. So usually it either kind of fits into that or it doesn't, but unless I'm actually going out and doing a bunch of research to try and answer a question, I probably don't specifically charge for emails,
Yeah,
particularly in between like, if we have 1 or 2 back and forths, I don't really.
right. I kind of do because I'll be building the email while I'm editing, like with notes, but it's fast. If I have to research a lot, I actually do that off the clock because I take that as a learning experience for myself.
I
Um,
suppose it depends on the topic. If it's
it
something.
depends.
Yeah.
It's
Although
always, it depends.
that's not a good answer. If it's something that I feel like I should know that I don't know, then yes,
Mhm.
I will take it upon myself. If it's something that's, very specific to them and I have to find something, sometimes it just depends.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really a
So,
terrible answer, but
yeah, no, it's part of business, right? So, where can people find you online, and are you taking on clients?
sure. You can find me at the corner of knitandtea.com.
Love
That
that.
was the name of my podcast because I drink tea and I used to talk all about knitting, but I have other pursuits. There is a page at the corner of Knit and Tea about tech editing and information on how to contact me, and I am always looking forward to working with new clients. So please feel free to reach out. Generally, my schedule runs about a week turnaround.
Mhm.
But again, it depends, but I'll be upfront with you about what I
Yeah.
have on my plate at the current time. My podcast is on YouTube, but I also post that and show notes every week to the website. And then the mismatch is that I am on Instagram as Fluffy Kira, um,
Mhm.
which it's an old AOL Instant Messenger nickname, and I went with it. And my husband is very funny because I have both an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree in business, and he's like, "You went to school in business twice, and you still couldn't get everything all under one business name."
Ah, it works
And
though.
I've thought about changing it to the corner of knit and tea, but then like every A, that's really long, and B, so many people know me as that now because that's always been my Instagram name. So
Yeah.
I feel like, do I change it? Do I not change it? Do I
It depends.
exactly. So but those are the best ways to find me, and I'm always open to chatting with other tech editors or with designers. So
Thank you for being here, and thank you for being such a valuable member of the Tech Editor Hub community. I'm so excited to have this chat with you because I don't think we've ever talked this long.
well, and it's
We've
funny
worked
because we've worked in proximity to each
we
other for a
have,
lot of years, but
but we've never had a
yeah.
conversation. So this was very exciting for me.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you
Laura.
so much.
And
It
thank
was
you
a pleasure.
everyone who joined us live. And if you're watching on the replay, feel free to toss a question down in the comment and I'll forward it to Laura for you. Thanks. Y'all have a happy rest of your week. Happy editing.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye.